Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and I gotta tell you, when even CoinDesk, also known as FUDdesk, is writing arguments about how XRP is going to melt faces, maybe it's time to pay attention to XRP. Just a crazy idea coming from Uncle Moon Lambo over here. Here's the headline from CoinDesk. XRP primed for record rally, echoing bullish Bitcoin pattern ahead of $100,000 breakout. That is wild to see from CoinDesk. They almost exclusively for the last decade have posted negative article after negative article after negative article about XRP, frequently writing falsehoods, all sorts of stuff I've had to correct over the years on this channel. And here they are. That's kind of fascinating. Are they maybe tired of being wrong about XRP? Maybe. CoinDesk, same story. They've also spent the last decade writing hit pieces and crap about XRP, and they still do. Just to be clear, it's not like they've exclusively chosen to exclusively write positive pieces about XRP, but because they can't let they seem incapable of allowing their affliction known as XRP derangement syndrome to fully subside. But this is progress. Cointelegraph, same story. Here's the headline. It's just wild to see this. 3 signs that XRP will soon break out after 4-month consolidation. You don't say. Like all of the analysts that have great track records that have been screaming this forever. Now, there's also the broader question of, are we even going to have an alt season? The answer is yes, and I'm going to explain why I firmly believe that. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Now, as I record this video, it is 2:14 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, June 28th, 2025. XRP is up. Yes, it certainly is. Just a hair shy of $2.19. Bitcoin at $107,384. You might call this the calm before the storm. Things, they are coming. And as far as this CoinDesk piece, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but I want to share with you a couple select parts of this just because it's so fascinating. It's just fascinating to observe this from CoinDesk. Having closely observed the crap and that they've written about XRP over the years and how they have this shift. It is endlessly fascinating to me. And so this piece was written by a chartered market technician named Amkar Godbol, writes for CoinDesk. And he writes the following. Imagine a ship caught in a fierce storm, battered by large waves and swaying wildly, yet staying afloat. It indicates that beneath the turmoil, resilience persists, suggesting that smooth sailing will follow once the storm passes. Similarly, when an asset's price refuses to decline despite bearish signals from key indicators, it suggests underlying strength and a potential bull run ahead. That's the current situation in the XRP market and mirrors conditions in the Bitcoin market that foreshadowed Bitcoin's historic run higher from $70,000 to $100,000 late last year. Okay, I can appreciate a little bit of positivity, and they even note that Ripple and XRP are different. Hell has officially frozen over. Now, they didn't actually need to even mention Ripple at all, so maybe it hasn't completely, maybe it's just, I don't know, is it starting to freeze a little bit? I don't know, something's happened here. But they acknowledge that Ripple and XRP are different things. Frequently over the years, they've pretended and written as though they're the same thing. How about that? It's just it's crazy to see this. So anyway, you go down here, though, because I don't want to read this whole thing. It gets really in the weeds. And if you're like hyper interested in technical analysis and the nitty gritty, which is a certain percentage of people listening to the channel, well, actually, you can just pause it at any point that you want as I'm scrolling up and down this thing if you want to read it, or you can go to the website here. But I want to go to the end here where they're comparing this. So XRP is similar to the conditions in Bitcoin last year when the weekly MACD kept flashing red throughout the summer. At the same time, Bitcoin traded range-bound, barring occasional short-lived dips below $60,000. CoinDesk noted the divergence in mid-September last year when Bitcoin changed hands at around $59,000, and weeks later, Bitcoin rose to $70,000, eventually topping the same in November to hit record highs above $100,000. Let's see if XRP follows the same path. And so they're acknowledging that this thing may rip to the upside. And it should just be obvious. I share tons of perspective from as many analysts as I can find who I think are actually reputable and have a pretty decent track record, though no one's perfect. And it's just so obvious. They all recognize that what's been happening this year is after XRP hit its all-time high, it's been consolidating. We're just range-bound now. It's very normal. In fact, the range of volatility has been decreasing as we progress throughout this year to this point. We're reaching an apex, and this thing's going to break before hitting that. And then there's a question of, is it going to break up or down? And analysts argue, the ones I follow, up. And it's very difficult at this point to find an analyst who is willing to put their neck on the line and say, no, this is a bearish chart. It's going to go to the downside. Because the analysts that are operating in good faith, they're all seeing roughly the same thing. It's just so obvious. Again, even Cointelegraph, and I don't want to read this whole thing either, and some of this is kind of stupid. Like, they're citing as a reason that XRP is going to go up Ripple's acquisitions and ledger updates. Okay, great things. Super, you want to talk about it in your article to fill some space, fine. But XRP is going to rip regardless. It is so perfectly positioned. It doesn't matter what Ripple's buying. Ripple has had about 0% impact on the price of XRP, and is evidenced by the fact that anytime they've had any fantastic news, even if it pertains to XRP specifically, the market just doesn't move. The market doesn't give a damn. The market just moves in tandem. So same for the XRP ledger upgrades. Great, but is that something that's really going to be the reason we're going to look back at, the XRP ledger upgrade? Without that, XRP would not have run. Get the hell out of here. That's just a stupid idea. But they are acknowledging what other chart analysts have been seeing, including analysts I've been highlighting on my channel. Look at this key takeaway here. Elliott Wave analysis and Bull Pennant suggest an XRP price breakout to $5 to $14. Okay. If we actually only get to $5, that would be disappointing. That would be genuinely disappointing. I think that's ridiculous, personally. I'm not so bold as to make a price prediction. I'm just a dude on the internet. But I would be very surprised if that happens. Maybe not technically impossible, but I'd be very, very surprised. You're talking about less than a twofold increase from the peak of the last market, not last market cycle, but 2 cycles ago when XRP hit its all-time high of $3.35. You're talking about less than a twofold increase after waiting almost a decade. When XRP has the strongest fundamentals out there, and the market's just so perfectly primed, and institutional money's pouring in, and there are 11 firms pushing for XRP spot ETFs because there's that much interest in XRP. That's more interest on the ETF side. That's the most interest that any coin has from firms. Solana, they were just at 7 a while ago. I think they might be up to 9 firms now, but XRP's leading the pack here. There's endless interest here. So now if you're talking about closer to double-digit price action, okay, that's starting to sound a bit more reasonable, frankly. But it could be the case that the analysts that are calling for $20 to $30 end up being correct. We're going to find out together. But either way, alt season, it is a-coming, folks. Take a look at this post from Julian Biddle. Julian is the head of macro research at Global Macro Investor, so he works with Raoul Paul. And Julian Biddle posted this actually just a few hours ago, several hours or so ago. This is 9:44 a.m. this morning. This chart is alt season, percent of assets, excluding stablecoins, outperforming Bitcoin over a rolling 90-day period. And he simply wrote, alt season loading. And so you can see, when we get to extremes, and when you get to a lower extreme, you know what follows, right? Now, this is going back to 2019, so you can't see the 2017, 2018 data. But obviously we know that the last real alt season occurred in 2021. It's been several years now. See how high it got? And so, yeah, you're going to see vacillations between one extreme to another. But in terms of having a full-blown alt season, haven't really seen one since 2021. But when you do get to one extreme, look, no metric is the end-all be-all, but this is one more thing you can look at to be like, this sure is lining up, and then you can see the confluence. But when you get to this point where this indicator's at 8% at the bottom, what do you think happens next? A positioning like this is what precedes a massive move. So it's one more thing, not the end-all be-all. This is one more thing you can look at. Spot on. And then there was a post from a popular analyst named TXMC, and he was basically arguing that we may not see an alt season, and this is in January actually, might not see an alt season because there's so much money in Bitcoin ETFs. Now, I've always found this argument to be unconvincing Always happy to hear, contrarian points of view, which I think that actually is in this case. Excuse me, folks. And so XRP community member Michelle Nightingale brought this up and was asking the blockchain backer about this. He said, blockchain backer, really? TXMC has been saying capital won't rotate to altcoins given that Bitcoin demand is driven by ETFs and corporate Bitcoin treasuries this cycle. Since they're unlikely to rotate Bitcoin profits to alts, alts will remain stagnant. Do you think institutional demand will hurt alt season? And so I'll share with you my thoughts on that. I don't know that the blockchain backer responded. I didn't see anything. Maybe you did. I just didn't see it. I disagree with that. And so I responded and I said, I don't buy that narrative. What about all the tremendous amounts of money that bought Bitcoin directly instead of buying an ETF? You better believe those profits will roll into altcoins. Also, keep in mind, the money that rolled into Bitcoin ETFs is mostly money that wouldn't have entered crypto at all unless this new investment vehicle had existed. Meaning there are tons of people who opted to buy crypto on exchanges. Proof? Look at what happened after the election. The Coinbase app became one of the most downloaded apps on the planet. To say there will be no alt season, you'd have to believe people are no longer buying crypto on exchanges, which is just silly. Okay, and I firmly believe that. And there are other metrics you could look at. I didn't want to get too crazily in depth, but there are all sorts of sleuths out there who could show you the data, inflows, outflows from exchanges, additional data proving, there's a lot of price action. And then with a company like Coinbase, my God, you can look at their quarterly earnings reports and you can see they're doing just fine. And they're doing just fine because people are buying all sorts of stuff on their exchange. And that's just one example. But to think that people, just because a centralized option lets you buy what's effectively a derivative, you can buy this ETF backed by Bitcoin just because that exists. Now it just dries up all of the interest in buying Bitcoin and other assets on actual exchanges, actual crypto exchanges. No, absolutely not. I find that argument incredibly unconvincing. And just wait by the time the cycle's ended, it will be very obvious that that's a bad take. No disrespect to the guy; I think he's a smart dude. I'm just respectfully disagreeing because I do not find that argument compelling. That's all. So there we are. I also wrote, keep in mind that many altcoins are so illiquid that it takes very little money flowing in to get them to rocket. Then FOMO kicks in and you get crazy green candles all over the place. Also want to share with you a bit of this. This is from the Daily Hodl. Analyst says $170,000 Bitcoin is closer than you think. And so this perspective here is coming from chart analyst TechDev, and the Daily Hodl is covering that. I think TechDev is one of the best out there. 532,000 followers for a reason here. And he said that, they're arguing here, after a correction into the $90,000 range, Bitcoin may soon increase more than 60% from its current value. Quote, $95,000 would make sense structurally, then $170,000 is closer than you think, end quote. Okay, so we know that most of the funds flowing into the crypto space are not from ETFs. They're from people purchasing on actual crypto exchange. Look it up. And profits are going to roll out of Bitcoin into altcoins, including XRP. And I'm telling you, if Bitcoin really gets that high, which isn't that's not crazy. I don't know if it's going to hit that high. But if it hits $170,000, oh my God, the price that XRP will be, because people are going to take profits. It's going to rotate. Anyway, Peace continues. TechDev's bullish case is based on several indicators. He believes Bitcoin cycles have been correlated to the performance of the overall macroeconomy. Based on his chart and historical patterns, the analyst suggests the business cycle is bottoming and may start to increase, which has coincided with massive Bitcoin rallies in 2013, 2017, and 2021, when the flagship crypto asset hit the cycle peaks. Quote, reevaluate your top calls, end quote. That was from TechDev. And so you can see here, there's additional confluence. There's all sorts of metrics you can look at to be like, yeah, this bitch about to blow. We're going to have an alt season. It's coming, folks. TechDev also uses the copper to gold ratio as a reliable signal pointing to a likely massive Bitcoin surge. The copper/gold ratio, often viewed as a proxy for economic risk appetite, has formed a bottom similar to 2020 and 2016, which preceded Bitcoin bull runs, the analyst says. Quote, the steep part lies ahead, end quote. Look at the chart. You can see what he's talking about here. Bottoming out like you would hope and expect it to, including from a historical perspective. You can guess what's next. The green dot up here from last cycle, we're going to have one right up here somewhere. It's a coming. The analyst previously said the M2 money supply's year-over-year change is pointing to a brewing Bitcoin surge. The global M2 money supply, a key indicator of liquidity in the world's financial system, has shifted from negative to positive annual growth. Okay, that's something I've been screaming about for a lot of this year, because although, like I always say, no metric is the end-all be-all, this one's about as close as it gets. If there's an increase in liquidity, people, businesses, and institutions got to put funds somewhere. What do you think's going to happen? Well, history shows us that there's an increased appetite historically for risk on assets like stocks and cryptocurrencies, including XRP. That's why this matters. So yeah, XRP primed for record rally. The headline here again from CoinDesk of all places sounds about right to me. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say, all right? That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.